Shalom, everyone, and we are in Parashat Shlach Lecha. Parashat Shlach Lecha is very intense. We have the story of the Meraglim, the spies. So the parasha is few sections. The first section is about Moshe Rabbeinu sending the heads of the tribes to tour the land. Okay, they come back with they're simply messed up. They have doubts. They can't. They badmouth the country. They get the whole nation upset. Everybody's crying, and then that gets terrible decree of the 40 years staying in the desert. You'll see that chapter 14, verse 1. ותישא כל העדה ויתנו את כולם ויבכו בלילה ההוא. So everybody was crying the whole night, that night. וילונו על משה, and everybody was complaining about Moshe and Aaron. כל בני ישראל, all children of Israel, ויאמרו אליהם, כל העדה, and the whole congregation said to them, לומתנו בארץ מצרים במדבר הזה לומתנו. We wish we died in Egypt or in the desert. ולמה השם מביא אותנו לארץ הזאת לנפול בחרב? Why does Hashem bring us to this country to fall by sword? נשינו, טפינו יהיו לבז. Our women and our children will be spoiled. Let's better go back to Egypt. Like in Egypt, it was amazing, right? Okay. And then Moshe has to pray for Am Yisrael and again ask for forgiveness. It's in the level of the sin of the golden calf. So it's a very, very tough week this week because the option to fall and to make terrible mistakes with horrible way of thinking is very strong this week. And again, we have Hashem saying, well, let's kill all of them and make you a new nation. I don't want to go into this because there's so much about it. And then comes another version of the 13 attributes, but now it's only 9. Slach na לעוון הזה כגודל חסדך. Chapter 14, verse 19, forgive for this, the sin of this nation, for the greatness of your chesed. Okay, so we have also the forgiveness, and that's on chapter 14, verse 20. Vayomer Hashem salachti kidvarecha. Hashem says, I forgave according as your request. So this is pretty heavy, and the question is, what's in it for us? What do we learn from that? Because it means that this week is not going to be an easy week. Things will look like terrible. Things will have a lot of opportunities to fall and fall into doubts. Here we have the decree of the 40 years in the desert and the death of those people that badmouthed the country, the land of Israel. And then the attack of the Amalekites and the Canaanites, not so nice. Okay, but as we end that story, so we go to chapter 15, verse 1, and it says, and Hashem speaks to Moshe, talks to Moshe, saying, talk to the children of Israel, and you tell them, as you come to the land of your settlements that I'm giving you. And you are going to make offerings. And there's offerings for atonement, for forgiveness. So it's like Hashem says, I made my promise. I'm not changing my promise. If you have any problem with that, it's your problem, but it's not. My promise is still standing. Okay? And then he goes to the same chapter, verse 22. וכי תשגו ולא תעשו את המצוות האלה. And if you make mistakes, as you make mistakes, and you don't follow the mitzvot that Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu, ואת כל אשר ציווה השם עליכם ביד משה, והיה עמנה, and again, the offerings about atonement. And then another story, which is pretty much belittled, but it's because it's under the shadow of the terrible big story of the Meraglim. And you'll find that in chapter 15, verse 33, 32. והיו בני ישראל במדבר, and the children of Israel are in the desert, וימצאו איש מקושש עצים ביום השבת, and they found a man gathering trees, but in Hebrew it's trees and wood, sounds almost, it's the same, on Shabbat, on the day of the Shabbat. ויקריב אותו, מוצאים אותו מקושש עצים אל משה. So the people found him gathering the wood, they brought him to Moshe, Aaron, and the whole congregation. And they didn't know what to do with him, and he was stoned to death. Okay? And then the next story, verse 37, chapter 15, is the parasha of the tzitzit. That we know in Parashat HaTzitzit there are 72 words. Okay? And it's part of the Shema Yisrael. We say it every day. The Parashat HaTzitzit, that's the fourth paragraph of the 248 words of the Shema Yisrael. So, which is Malchut, which is correction, which is the Tzitzit is protection. It's about the spiritual growth. It's about the surrounding light. So what's in it for us, this amazing, powerful parasha that basically opens up few parashot with scandals. We have then Korach, Balak, Pinchas. So ahead of us, we have a month full of scandals, and that's after Mount Sinai Revelation, that's after Matan Torah, that's after Shavuot, to show the fact that we celebrated Shavuot, and whoever experienced the energy of Shavuot, this is like flying so high, and then you can lose it all. Why? Because we are humans, and the fact that we're humans means we have free will, and free will means that we always need to find the challenges and to deal with them daily. Yeah, but I want a nice, easy life. And as we learned last week, if you want it easy and nice, and everybody should be nice to you and so on, forget it. That's not the game. You're trying to play the wrong game, and that's a problem. And when you get upset because it's like, oh, like somebody signed a deal with you, or with us, it's like that's the way people speak, like that everything in our life should be nice and easy. And nobody signed, nobody gave us that commitment. Remember that, okay? And if you're trying to have it nice and easy, that's going to be very disappointing, okay? So don't even go there. But still we do that. So that's the Zohar of this parasha, is trying to help us with this issue. Okay, so we will start with the Zohar of Parashat Shlach Lecha, Asulam, verse 8. תחזי, משה הווה שמשה, ובאה לעלה להרעה. אמר לו קודשה ברכו, משה כדר עתי נהורה דשמשה, התקלה סיירה בגבי. השתא דען שמשה, איך יקומון כחדה שמשה וסיירה. לא נהר סיירה, אלא בשעתה להתקנה שמשה, אבל השתא לי לית אנט יחיל, אי טבעי למינדה, מינה, שלח לך אנשים לגרמך, בגין למינדה. Come and see. בואו ראה. Moses was like the sun. And the sun means, it's compared to Sefirat Zeranpin, the spiritual world, which is ongoing flow of light. Even when it's night, it's dark for us, not because the sun took a vacation and went to sleep, just because the earth is turning its back to the sun, okay? So that's about the spiritual world, Ze'er Anpin. That Ze'er Anpin is always shining, always like ready to fill us with light. The problem is, do we turn our face or our back to Ze'er Anpin? Are we trying to elevate ourselves, Behalotcha, and reach, ascend, connect to Ze'er Anpin, or are we basically giving our back to it by being busy with our materialistic stuff and with our addictions? Okay? So Hashem says to Moshe, you are like the sun. And when the sun is shining, the moon's light is diminished. You can't see the light of the moon. Sometimes it's middle of the day, you raise your head and you see the moon. But nobody noticed the moon because the moon's light is not an issue when it's daylight, because relatively to the sun, moon's light is nothing. Okay? Now, so says God to Moses, since you are the sun relatively, if you are going to come to the land of Israel, your light is going to be so strong, the moon will never be able to shine. Who's the moon? The Zohar says the moon is Joshua and Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel. It's like the moon and the stars. The moon and the stars can shine only after the sun sets. When Moshe is around, there's basically no free will, because the light of Moshe was so strong still, and maybe this is why everybody was upset all the time, because you're next to Moshe Rabbeinu, you can shine, and you cannot be a creator. You can manifest yourself. You can take responsibility, because Moshe Rabbeinu is dimming. It makes every other light dim. Okay? But you cannot go to the land. And if you want to know from that land, you want to connect to that land, to the Holy Land, send people, and it says shlach lecha. Shlach lecha means send for yourself. Dainu la'atzmecha, for yourself, kedei shetada. You would know by yourself. How? Verse 9. Moshe, תאמר שהוא לא היה יודע. So you're going to say that Moses did not know that he cannot get in. He knew. But still he wanted to know, to connect to the land before he leaves this world. And so he sent those spies. Since when they came back, they did not bring the right answer. Okay? They did not. שלא השיבו לו דבר כראוי. They came out really messed up. Why? Think about it. They went to the Holy Land. They were supposed to be so excited from the experience, but they came in with a lot of doubts. And the Zohar speaks about those doubts in other places. They simply were not ready. Another thing, they were there 40 days without Moses. And as they were, we know again, Moses is Da'at. Da'at means, Sfirat Da'at is the Sfira that connects Chokhmah and Binah and brings it down to our world. It's a manifestation, Da'at. It's a connection. However, Da'at also means awareness, knowledge. And Moshe, as long as he was around, he had the ability to bring our consciousness to the right place. So every time we fell, he brought us up again. However, the fact that we're the 40 days, those 12 men who were the best men among the nation, 12 men, 40 days in the land of Israel without Moses, and their da'at collapsed. 10 of them, the big majority. 10 of them, the da'at has been collapsed. Instead of being spiritual people, which means, as we spoke about in previous sessions, responsibility, loyalty, the willing to work hard, understanding what consciousness means. They lost all of it just being away from Moses for 40 days. Okay? And that was to show Moses that they are not ready. And more than that, even when they came back and they are messed up, and the nation standing in front of them, instead of saying, hey, guys, fake news, nobody asked you to bring a report about such a report about the land. You just came to bring some idea about so we know what kind of a land we're entering. But you came already with a verdict. There's no way that we can take all. No, people listened to them, not to Moses, and cried for no reason for the whole night. Okay? And so they failed the test. 10 leaders and the whole nation failed the test. What was the test? Are they ready to shift from a nation of slaves? And we already learned about what does it mean to be a slave. No responsibility, no will to pay the price for the victory and the winning that you want to achieve. If you don't have that will, you don't have that understanding and that consciousness, you cannot enter the land. You're not ready. And that was the question. So they're not ready. And about Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, the Zohar said, later on, in the end of the 40 years, before he passed on, it says, Ale el ha'avarim, Hashem said to Moshe, come up to the mount and see the land. And it says, Vayar'eu Hashem et kol haaretz, and Hashem showed him the whole land. We know it was not a physical sight because there's no mountain in the east to the Jordan River that you can see the whole land. You can see maybe up till Jerusalem, maybe a bit north up till the Kinneret, maybe, okay, maybe south till the Dead Sea, but you cannot see the whole land, okay? So, of course, Moshe got the connection to the whole land in and out of body astral traveling, okay? And then it says, Lo ze bilvad, to show us that it was not a physical sight, אלא כל אלו המנהיגים העתידים לקום בכל דור ודור. But Hashem showed Moses all the leaders that are going to be at the head, leading the nation for all the generations till Mashiach, which means you can't see that with the physical eyes. He showed all of them to Moshe. ולמדנו, and we already discussed this issue. But what's important is like this, and that's verse 10. כיוון שהתחיל משה לשלוח, since he was getting them ready to go, מה אמר להם? What did he tell them? היש בעץ, is there a tree? וכי מה הוא שמע זה? Why he said that? Well, I didn't know if there are trees or not. But he says, is there a tree? Not are there trees. אלא כך אמר משה. But Moshe said this way. אם יש בה עץ, אני יודע שכנס שמה. מהו עץ? זהו עץ החיים. If the leaders of the tribes will see the tree, which tree says as well? The tree of life in the land of Israel, then I know it's my time to get in because the nation is ready. They passed the test. They are ready to connect to the tree of life. And if they're ready to connect to the tree of life, that means I can go with them because they are shining in the level of Zeir Anpin, like me. So they are not the moon right now. They are shining like the sun. והוא היה שם אלא בגננת הארץ. אמר משה, אם יש בעץ הזה, אני אכנס שם, אם לא, אני יכול להיכנס. So Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to see, can those leaders and can the nation of Israel, with all what they went through, with all the tests, the miracles they went through, Are they able already to connect the tree of life while entering the chosen or the promised land? Okay, is that clear? So the whole thing was a big, big test. The test was, can they connect to the tree of life? And what was the answer? The answer was they connected to the tree of knowledge, good and evil. Okay, which means their consciousness was in the wrong place, and therefore they were not ready to enter the Holy Land. They could not enter with Moshe to the Holy Land. They had to wait 40 years in the desert till their consciousness has been settled, and especially till all the people that participated in that sin already died. Why 40 years? Is all the people that were eligible in that day, which means all the people who were already, all the men that were at the age between 20 to 60. It took 40 years to wait till all of them died in the desert. Okay? Only after the 40 years were over, then the new generation could enter the Holy Land. But these people already were raised by Moshe, so they were not having slave mentality. They already had the mentality of free men. Okay. But then we come to the next story. Remember the story about the person who was gathering trees, which the word in Hebrew can mean gathering, but not necessarily. And let's see, what does it mean? And what's the connection between the two stories? Verse 11, אמר רבי חייא, כתוב וימצאו איש מקושש עצים ביום השבת. It says, they found a man gathering trees on the day of Shabbat. מהם העצים שבכאן ומיהו זה האיש? What are these trees and who is that person? הוא משיב, and he answers, אלא זהו צלופחד. This man, his name is Tzlofchad, the man that was found gathering trees. שהיה מדייק, and what was his sin? היה מדייק לדעת, he was trying on Shabbat to reach a precise comparison about those trees. Which trees? The tree of life and the tree of knowledge, which are Zeir Anpin and Malchut. Which one of them? איזה מהם גדול מן האחר? Which one of them is bigger? ולא חשש לכבוד אדונו והחליף בין שבת לשבת. He had no fear, which means no respect to his master, and he replaced Shabbat with another Shabbat. What does it mean? It's all codes. That's what it says, כי בחטאו מת. Why בחטאו מת? What does it mean, חטאו? חטא וו. חטאו, his sin, but the way it's written in Hebrew is חטא, sin, וו. חטאו. What does it mean? The חטא of וו. He blemished Zeir Anpin, which is the letter Vav of the Yud Kei Vav Kei. And that's what killed him. And therefore, Mishum Zaya Dino Satum, his judgment was unclear, and the congregation did not know what to do with him. It was not so clear as the other judgments. Okay? As it says, he was mekoshesh etzim in Hebrew, could be gathering wood or comparing the trees. Which trees? Tree of life, tree of knowledge. It's the same words, but in Hebrew it has double meaning. Okay? So what's wrong with what he did? So, Perush. Now we go deep, listen carefully. יש בנוקבה שני מצבים. female, which means Malchut, Sfirat Malchut, the vessel, has two stages of existence. Okay? Um, like two positions. You know, in some machines have position A, position B, right? Position one is when Malchut was created, it was big as Zeranpin, the male aspect. They were both in the same level, which means at that time, Zeranpin was, we're talking about in the process of emanation, what we learn as a tree of life, or the Talmud as a Sfirot, okay? When Zeranpin and Malchut were created, they were created as Zeranpin was emanated as a right column of Sfirat Bina, and Malchut left column of Sfirat Bina. They were now, because each one of them was connected directly to Bina, they were not united, and they were connected each one by himself. Without, there was no codependency as today. There was total separation and total independence. Each one of them was connected on his own. Why it didn't stay like this? Because when Malchut, the left column of Bina, is receiving directly from Bina, she does not need Zeranpin, but she's in darkness. Why? Because the left column alone is darkness. Because the rules in this world are that if the left column wants to draw the light, the left column needs chesed, the light of chasadim. Otherwise, the left column by itself, just when I say, but I want it, left column, I desire it, left column, I have passion for it, left column, that's not justified. Why? If you want to receive for yourself alone, you cannot receive the light, you will stay in the dark. Why? The rule of affinity that says similarities attract. The light that is coming from Bina is the light like from the endless coming through Bina, but the only way you can tap into the light as a steady state, you need to have one, desire, two, you need to have the ability to share, desire to receive for the sake of sharing. So now, if Malchut is left column of Bina and Zeranpin is only Chasadim, right column of Bina, both are in the dark. Both are in the dark. Why are both in the dark? Because Chasadim alone, you cannot receive the light. Giving alone, just when you give and you give and you give and you give, you know, how many people do you know? Or how many times do you find yourself giving unconditionally and then you become empty? And you feel so dark inside. Why? Because it's not about giving unconditionally. It's not about receiving. Just you need to have the desire to receive, which is Malchut, for the sake of sharing, which is Zeranpin. When these two columns are separated, both are in the dark. Sharing alone is not good. It's depleting. Receiving alone, it's not good because you stay in the dark. So Malchut had to go down. So position one is when Malchut is left column of Bina. But that cannot exist because Malchut is in the dark and Zeranpin is in the dark. So Malchut had to diminish itself and to go down under Zeranpin. Now, Malchut, which is us, when we want to receive anything good, we need A, to desire it, B, we need to be able to transform it into the desire to receive for the sake of sharing. This is how we tap into Zeranpin, and then Zeranpin can be fulfilled with the light. Why? Because with the desire of Malchut, Zeranpin right now can bring the light from Bina. So it's the first case in the history of reality of symbiosis. What symbiosis? Malchut by itself cannot exist. Zeranpin by itself cannot exist. But when they join together in a situation in which Malchut is diminished and giving the lead to Zeranpin, which means first giving and sharing, and then I can receive. That's called the union of Zeranpin with Malchut. Malchut must diminish itself. Otherwise, if it's too dominant, if it's first me, there's no chesed, there's no light, there's just darkness. Is that clear? Okay, so the two positions are basically called the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. When they are side by side, it's good and evil next to each other. It's not good and it's not evil, it's just evil. Why? Because win-lose is always lose-lose, right? And when Malchut and Zeranpin are united, when Malchut is willing to give up its extra desire to receive, in order to be able to unite, to come to terms, to consolidate the desire to receive so I can also share. And that means the Malchut is diminished and allowing Zeranpin to bring it, the light from Binah. Okay? The sin of Tzlofchad was that on the day of Shabbat, when Zeranpin and Nukbaim really coming back face to face. Okay, during the weekdays, we are all the time, most of the time, it's a position of tree of life, good and evil. What does it mean? Whenever we have a desire, an aspiration, an idea, it always rises as a desire to receive for the self alone, Malchut. Then we need to take responsibility, shut it down, elevate to Zeranpin, and inject the spiritual aspect by saying, it's not only for me, it's also for the purpose of sharing, not just for me, just for others. Okay, when I do that, I bring the tree of life into the reality of the tree of knowledge. That's called free will. When we choose the tree of life, which means certainty, love, appreciation, caring for others, not forgetting about myself, knowing how to receive, and at the same time, be there for others. So that's our job, and that's a tikkun of the sin of the tree of knowledge during the 6 days of the week. However, when Shabbat comes, Shabbat is a gift. What does it mean? We do not need to do that job of elevating Malchut to Zeranpin, which is giving the excess desire to receive, giving it up, and igniting loving and caring and chesed to others. That's the only way we can unite Zeranpin and Malchut. That's the job of the tikkun that we do on weekdays. On Shabbat, automatically, as we light the Shabbat candles, Malchut ascends up to Bina, to Zeranpin, and now both Malchut and Zeranpin are facing each other. They're in union, face to face, in a steady union of tree of life. That what we have to do is just not to disturb it. Light Shabbat candles, make the prayers, Kiddush, Seudot Shabbat, prayers and stuff like this, and we just connect to that corrected state of tree of life. This is Shabbat. Okay? So there, it means that the Zeranpin and Malchut are now face to face in union to the whole Shabbat. So what happened at Tzlofchad? He was Mekoshesh Etzim. He was kind of comparing, I'll come soon to what does it mean. Etz HaChaim, the tree of life, which is Zeranpin, and Etz HaDat, which is Malchut. And what does it mean comparing? He will try to make them the same, like it used to be in phase 1, in the first position. Okay? And by this, it is like he separated Malchut from the union of Zeranpin that is on Shabbat. And he brought it back because before In the beginning, when Malchut and Zerpin were created, each one of them was created, they were back to back. What does it mean back to back? No communication. Malchut was on one side, I don't need you. Zerpin was on the other side, I don't need you. I'm connecting to Binah. What's the problem? You are in dark. You're in the darkness because only through cooperation, union, Zerpin and Malchut, each one has to give up something. Then you create face to face. But it was not the first position. Okay? And what he was doing, he was kind of comparing, maybe it was better the phase one than the tree of life phase, which is up after the tikkun was done, which is Shabbat. That's why he says that Me'ein Olam Haba. Shabbat is like the world of tikkun, when the world will come to its end the way we know it, which is the world of contradictions, hard work, doubts, failing, and so on and so on. When this world will come to its end, because the correction will be already there, then every day will be Shabbat. What does it mean, Shabbat? That Zeranpin and Malchut are united face to face, which means we don't need to go through tests anymore. And remember, how do you say tests in Hebrew? Nisayon. Nisayon means not really a test, it means nes, creating a miracle. What's a miracle? That we overcome our initial desire to receive for the self alone, our initial desire to stay put down there, okay? And overcome that initial desire, and instead of it, having it all fixed, but we have to earn it, correct? So what's wrong with what Tzlofchad was doing? And here it is. It says, כי עניין חטא הזה שהיה מחשיב מדרגת הנוקבה על זעיר אנפין, אינו לכבוד התורה, לכבוד הנוקבה. I'll make it like more simple. There's something very similar when we are reading Parashat Beshalach. Parashat Beshalach, Am Yisrael is experiencing the miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea. Everybody is in a prophetic state of consciousness, okay? We cross the Red Sea, we are flying like, wow. And then it says, we are coming to a place in which we are, Am Yisrael is checking, Hayesh Elokim Bekirbi Im Ein. Is there Elokim in me or Ein? Remember what it says before, when Moshe was asking the spies, it says, check if there is a tree or Ein. Very similar. What was the problem? They wanted to check out, are we in the consciousness of Elokim, which is state of judgment? Okay, we just left Egypt just 2 weeks ago, not even. Okay, are we in the level of judgment because Egypt was slavery and judgment? Or are we already in the level of Ein? What's the Ein? This is the high level of Keter. Keter is also called Ein, the Atika. That's a place that we experience on the Red Sea. Because, again, when we are talking about the two levels, it is known, and I spoke about it a long time ago, but it is known from the teachings of the Zohar, the Ramchal, the Arizal, there are two levels of Hanhaga. There are two kind of parallel universe of state of mind in the world of purity, of holiness. One is called Hanagat HaMishpat. Hanagat HaMishpat, this is the tree of life. But the tree of life in a level of the Torah and the judgments of the Torah. What does it mean? It means cause and effect. You do this, you get this. You do this, you get this. You do this, you do this. The problem, that's the whole Torah. Mostly, if you look at it the way it is, and you study the Torah and you study the prophets, and you study the Mishnah, the Talmud, and then all the other commentaries, it's always about, if you break it, you have to fix it. If you take it, you have to pay for it. That's the cause and effect rules. That's called Hanagat Hamishpat. Okay? That is the rules, the system of Mishpat, which means you go off board, there will always, for every action, there's an opposite and similar reaction. That's called Anagat Amishpat. The world is like a pendulum. If you go too much to the right, you'll have to fix it with going to the left, and so on and so forth. So all the rules of the Torah, as you read it in the simple level, and in the Remes, and in the Drash, which means the basic levels of what we call the rules of Judaism, it looks like whatever you do, there are consequences. Okay? However, sometimes you look at it, and a lot of people look at it, and most people look at it. You have a moment of clarity, and you say, like, there's no way. I look at all of these rules. You love others as you love yourself. Who can cheat himself to say that he does it all the time? And what does it say before love others as you love yourself? Lo titov velo tikom. You should not revenge, and you should not keep grudge. Who can say, I never felt like revenging. I never kept grudge. Okay? It's like we're humans when we are so full of mistakes and stuff like this. And the moment we're being asked to be perfect, we look at it and say, like, are you kidding me? How on earth am I going ever to be in that level? You're asking for too much. And what's the result? After a while, you start to give up. I'll never be that perfect. I'll never be that spiritual. You know what? So why bother? I don't know if I don't see myself being able to do that. But there's another rules. There's another system. And that's what the Zohar is about. And that's what Rabbi Shimon brought to the world when he was in the cave 13 years. And what happened when he was in the cave? He was running away. And the sages are saying, if you notice, Abraham Avinu had to run away from Ur. Okay? Yaakov Avinu had to run away from his brother Esau. Then he had to run away from Lavan. Okay? Then we have Moshe Rabbeinu running away from Pharaoh. Okay? For 40 years he was running away. You see it so many times. What is that running away issue? And the point is that we live in a world that is full of physicality and limitations and accounting. And those great people, they had that amazing ability to run away from the box. In the box, it's all logic. That's the tree of knowledge. It's all logic. If you go and you try to evaluate life with only logic, you can never, you know what? Even if you're the most genius accountant, you can never balance the books. Impossible. Impossible. So you have to run away. What's the runaway? Let's speak about the splitting of the Red Sea. And Moses is yelling to Hashem, and Hashem's answer is, what are you yelling at me? Speak to the children of Israel, let them travel. And the Zohar is asking, travel where? They were camping next to the sea. And the answer is travel above Yud Kei Vav Kei, travel to the Keter, to the Ain. When you reach to the Ain, and what is the Ain? The Ain is the level that is called Keter, and what is Keter? Keter is that when a person is looking at his situation and saying, there's no way I can really make it. Logically, it's impossible. You need to run away. You need to elevate all the way up to Keter. What is Keter? Keter is the seed of the creation. It's the cause of all causes. It's the reason of all reasons. What's the cause of all causes? The reason of all reasons. What's the source? The root of everything. That is the desire of the Creator to share his endless light with us. What is stronger? Our limitation, our limitations, our inability to reach completeness, okay? Or the desire of the Creator to share. Why is it also called Keter? Keter means in Hebrew a crown. And a crown takes you can take a mortal human being and crown him, and he becomes a king, a royalty, an anointed royalty. How that happens? There's something when the Keter is touching you, you're being anointed, you become special. When you realize that Keter also in Hebrew means to surround and to put a siege. When you put a siege on a city, no one can run away from your control. So the Keter is that thought that created the universe, sharing the great endless light with us. When we can ascend, not to Zeir Anpin, ascend to Keter, when we can go to that place, then we are capable of going to a place which is called Hanagat Keter, Hanagat Arich, Atik. Okay, and that's what the Zohar is saying. Then you realize that the desire of the Creator to share with me, it's so much stronger that my limitations, that it always overcoming my limitations. What I just need to do is to connect to that place that, sooner or later, that the power that controls my life is the power of the Keter, the power of the Ein. Ein means when Ein comes, it's the place which, when you reach that place, everything becomes nulled, annulled. What does it mean? When we are in the level of our consciousness, which is tree of life, or tree of knowledge, and even tree of life, it's all calculated. But when we're connecting to the Ein, it's all annulled. What does it mean annulled? All the calculations, all the setups, all the logics of right and wrong, good and evil, stuff like this, the moment we can really connect to that light, that is the runaway state. On the Red Sea, we ran away. What did we do for that? 72 names and a real, true trust in the light. And therefore, when we reach that place of total quietness, no calculation, Hashem will fight for you. You just have to keep silence. What do I mean silence? Stop making accountings. Stop thinking, do I deserve it or not? Do I deserve it or not? The answer is no. I don't deserve it. Okay? I rest my case. However, does Hashem wants to give me that light more than my limitations? Yes. So if I can connect to that place, that is the real nisayon. Nes means lanus, to run away up and above and outside the box. That is the thing. So when Am Yisrael comes after the splitting of the Red Sea, maybe we're already there. So they're testing Hashem. What's the problem? Why don't you want to know if you're already there? And the answer is what the sages are saying. What's wrong with that? What's wrong? It did not come, as we said over here with Slofchad, from a respectful place. It was from a place, the only word I can use for it is chutzpah. It's like when a person that really is not ready for it and really is not appreciative enough goes to a very secured place and is starting to behave in a way that is improper. Why? Because of lack of awareness, because of lack of appreciation. This is the problem of this parasha. Here it repeats again. Tzlofchad, he did not do this comparison from awe. He did it out of this respectful place. You know, sometimes a student comes to you and somebody comes to you and says, oh, you studied the Zohar, what about this and this problem, this? And from the tone of their questioning, you already know they don't really want an answer. And if you give them an answer, they won't even listen to it. They'll bring, oh, but that's not there. They just want to challenge you. They are coming from a place that is so full of doubt. They're so full of themselves. So even though the question looks like a proper question from a logical point of view, you know that the attitude is lacking humility, lacking appreciation, and therefore there's no vessel to receive the proper answer. So it doesn't matter what answer you're going to give. You need to do it also out of the box, because if you give the person the right answer, they won't listen because they didn't really want to hear the answer. It's like those people who ask you a question in a way that they are really certain that it's going to make you a little bit confused. They don't really want to know. They don't really want to solve an issue. And that was the problem with Tzlofchad. That is the same problem with the spies. They turn into a place that they came, it looks like when they came back from the tour of 40 days of the Holy Land, and they were like giving, like a committee that is giving the information and also the conclusions. By the way, nobody asked them for the conclusions. Okay? Moshe was just asking them, I want you to know if there's a tree, which means, is that the tree of knowledge, good and evil, or even the tree of life, or you can already connect to the land of Israel, to the Hanagat Ha'atik, Hanagat HaKeter, the way of like living in Israel. You need to, even Ben Gurion said, he was not a religious person, but he had some spiritual aspects when he said you cannot live in Israel and without trusting the miracles. That's exactly the definition. Moshe Rabbeinu, he wanted to know, would these people, are they ready to lead the people? And the story is about Ben Gurion, that before, after the declaration of the United Nations on the November 29th, 47, the United Nations Assembly gave a recommendation to split the land of the British Mandate of Palestine into two halves, Jewish Palestine and Arab Palestine. At that moment, Palestinians were all the people living in the British Mandate. Okay? There were only Arabs and Jews. There were no Palestinians. So after that, the whole Arab League declared that if the Jews will declare independence, they are going to invade, kill all the Jews, okay, destroy, finish the Holocaust, and also destroy their own Jewish communities, where about 1 million Jews living in the countries that were part of the Arab League. Okay? So a lot of leaders were calling Ben Gurion to say, don't even dare, you don't have the weapons, we are not going to give you any weapons. More than that, most countries of the world put embargo on weapon shipments to the Jewish community in Israel. So they were disarmed while they have organized armies around. So Truman, President Truman, was calling again and again to Ben-Gurion, don't even dare to declare a state, to declare independence. There's no way you can, and we are not going to help you. So Ben-Gurion asked his experts, tell me, what's the chance that we have to have victory and to survive? And the experts said to Ben-Gurion, kind of, we have some. He said, half and half? He says, no. How much? They said maybe 40% chances. He said, 40%, that's a lot. Because in Israel, if you just go with the calculations of options, he can't do anything. He went to declare independence. The Arabs denied the offer of the United Nations Assembly, which means the offer of the United Nations Assembly of 1947 of splitting the land of the British Mandate into two countries, Arab and Jewish, has no legal validity because one side accepted it and one side did not accept it. So if you have a document and one side is not willing to sign the document has no validity, no legal validity. So what's the validity? We go back to San Remo 1922, when all the nations of the League of Nations voted to have a British mandate in Palestine for Jewish homeland. Okay, that was a miracle that the Arabs didn't agree. So what happens? They win. And then again with the water problems and with the weapon embargo and so on for 73 years already, if you don't trust miracles, you cannot live in this country. Moses is checking the leaders of the future leaders of Israel coming to the Holy Land. Are they able to connect to Ain? Which means if you don't really trust the light of God and you're just calculating, there's no way you can survive in the land of Israel because that's a different land. This land needs trust, faith, and love. If you don't have that level of running away, you cannot survive in this land. But basically, those rules apply to everywhere around the planet. Everywhere around the planet, because you have, spirituality could be, I have to be nice, I have to fulfill the mitzvot, I have to be honest, I have to be this, I have to be this. And then comes a moment in which, I can't take it anymore. I'm always trying to be okay, in the eyes of God, but there's so much evil around me. You know what? Who cares for that? I want to live my life easy. I'll do whatever I feel like. If you don't connect to the Ain, and how you do that? 72 names, the Zohar, the study of the Zohar. That is the ability to run away from the reality of good and evil, tree of life, tree of knowledge, to the level of Ain. And if you do it with humility, not like, oh God, I'm testing you. Hello? What do you think? God is like a human being? We're talking about the endless light of the universe. And if you want to tap into that, you need to be in a stage of humility, sharing, caring, devotion, awe. Otherwise, you can't approach that force. And that is the test we are all being tested every day of our lives. Therefore, when we see all the stories of this parasha, it's giving us again more immunity, more trust, and more humility to be able to see those rules apply all the time. But we have to choose the place of the place that we call it more than the calf wants the milk. The cow mother wants to give him the milk. More than we want. The light of God, the Creator himself wants to give it to us. The problem is when we start to be like, oh God, why did you do this to me? Did he do it to us? Or did we got ourselves into it by being too much in love with our selfishness, with our bodily desires, with our addictions and stuff like this? That's our choice. If we choose that, so it's like we are annoyed by God's choices. No, it's our choice. We choose to fall, and we have to acknowledge that. And therefore, the moment we acknowledge it, whatever I experience is my choice, I need to run away from that choice to the Ein, to the place of silence, to the place of simple trust and belief in the greatness of the light of God. When we reach that place of silence, I just heard that story yesterday from somebody who heard it from it was a 1973 in the Yom Kippur War, and an Egyptian missile hit a tank, an Israeli tank, and it hit just on the latch of the door of the tank, and the tank went on fire. There was no way out. The whole crew of the tank knew it's over, and all of them together said together, Shema Israel Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, which means we give our souls to you, Hashem, because if we are supposed to die, it's okay. We are willing to go. And that moment, another missile hit the tank and broke the door enough so they can open it and run away, and all of them survived. Which means when we connect to that place of total trust in the Ein, in the Keter, in the will of the Creator to help us all the time, and just we need to give space for that light to come in, then everything is possible. But when you're starting to do accountings, yeah, they came, the spies, into the land of Israel, and they saw the giants, and they saw that, and they saw that. I won't go into the details, and they started to calculate stuff. Just a second. Not long ago, you saw the biggest empire, the strongest empire on earth, fall to its knees after the 10 plagues. The Canaanites were the vassals. They were the servants. They were under Egyptian occupation. Okay? Now they're free because the Egyptians have no power anymore after the 10 plagues. And if you won against the great master, you cannot deal with his servants? What happens to your logic? That's what happens to us. When we start the calculations, we forget that we have promise. We spoke about it in Parashat Ba'alotcha. Either we have the victim consciousness, the loser consciousness, and we just feel like being victims and complain, and then we don't see reality anymore. Either we have lust for sex or for the other desires of the flesh, or to badmouth other people, whatever. And when we have these needs, we forget the rules of the game. And then we can come out to the weirdest solutions of what should be done. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about issues of husband and wife, parents and children, business, society, running a country, because sometimes you look at people and say like, what? I thought that person is kind of a smart person. How could they decide something so foolish? And the answer is that's what happens when you fall into that place which is called the tree of knowledge, good and evil, and you forget that by humility, devotion, appreciation, awe of the whole system, you can run away from the world of the tree, of the trees, comparing the trees, and connect to the Ein, in which everything is possible. You know what? Whatever will happen will be the right thing. I do my best, and God will do the rest. Questions?
So I see that for this week then, with so many tribulations going on, the best strategy to have is just to be quiet, try to be humble and respectful of what I'm hearing around me, and then let a situation evolve of its own.
Yes, very simple, which means if when we connect to that humility and to that connection to the light of God and knowing that everything is from Him, even, even when you look at all of those people that you think they serve the evil, remember, the evil forces are not an authority of its own. They're also serving the good. They're also serving the good, and finally everything will come out to be good. The moment I look at a person, a nation, okay, a desire in a person as evil, pure evil, at that moment, that's a disgrace because there's nothing but the keter, nothing but the ayin. So everything, even though it doesn't look like it, it is serving the purpose. When I go with a pure heart and I do my best, then finally I realize, you know what? That was also for the good. That's so you're right. Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't understand the gentleman that went out to gather wood. What has to do with the difference between the Eitz Hadas, and the Eitz Hayim? The compare? I don't understand what that's all about.
Hebrew. He was comparing the trees. He was not gathering wood. He was comparing the trees. He was comparing the tree of knowledge and the tree of life, but it was from a disrespectful place. And when you come from a disrespectful place to study the Zohar, Kabbalah, Torah, everything, there's no way it's going to help you because you are disrespectful. If you come from a place of humility and you just want to know so you can get closer to Hashem, that can help you. So what is the stoning? Thank you for reminding me. The stoning, the Zohar says in another place, death by stoning is when a person is not doing his job, his evil inclination takes over, and he has so many bad thoughts that, you know, when you have bad thoughts, it's like your head is exploding. Why? Because those bad thoughts are like stones being thrown at you, and you feel like you're being stoned, correct? So what's the punishment of a person that is coming in? I just want to know, how could you tell, where was God when? And you know, he doesn't really know where was God when. He's just coming from a place of chutzpah. He's not willing to diminish himself. Like, I really want to understand, you know, he's not coming from a place that is ready to receive an answer. He's coming from a patronizing place. I want to know if it's okay of this theory of those weird Kabbalists or Rabbi Shimon. I don't know if I can trust it. When you come from such a place, there's no way you can get the answer. And what's the result? You're being stoned to death because the doubts and the bad thoughts and the anger and the envy and the hatred stone you to death. This is the result.
So it was a psychological stoning as opposed to a physical.
That's what's worse. What do you think?
Since I've never been stoned, I can't make that comparison.
You know, if you stone somebody, you know, stoning in the time of the Talmud was basically throwing somebody from a tower, right? So yeah. I don't know how much pain would you endure, but you're dead. But being stoned with bad thoughts and ideas and doubts and anger and hatred for years and years and years, this is a slow, painful, horrible death because you're dying every second again. And you know, these kind of people, they're angry about everybody. They're always right or self-righteous, but you see it's rotten with terrible thoughts of suffering. Okay, that's worse. And that's a self-punishment, okay? And we don't want to be there. We want to escape, to run away, to escape that place that dungeon of trying to compare, was it right, was not right? You know, what God did to me, I don't know if it was right because I saw the other person, it's right for me, but I don't know it. Why didn't the other people? Why is it I have to get all of these troubles? You know where it's coming from? It's the same thing. That's a symptom of somebody's being stoned. Okay?
I have a question. But when you have doubts about, for example, your kids, it's not a bad thinking. It's scary because your kids. So you have doubts and you are scared because you don't know what it will happen. So
yes, but the point is like this: you are their mother for this lifetime. The Creator is their parent since the creation. So who's more responsible for your kids? Okay, so when you just like, you know, I don't know the calculations, but I know that they have the soul, each one of them, and they need to go for what they need to go through. And as a mother, I can only give them wisdom, love, and more caring. I can't do more than that because I'm not God. God is always the father and mother, right? So you keeping silent means if you want them to listen to you, you have to represent that wisdom that they will like to listen to, correct? But if you project to your kids the fear and the anxiety, nobody wants to hear that because that doesn't feel right. It feels something to run away from.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes. I ask him that every day because it's difficult for my son. Here in Israel, for example, is so sad and punished with the language with me. He's so, I don't remember in English how to say. It's not good.
So what was the answer? Hashem yilachem lachem v'atem tacharishon. You keep silent and Hashem will fight for you. So when you project certainty and love, unconditional love, and say, you know what, it has to be your heart. It's like, you know, it doesn't matter if when you are a teen or in your early 20s and you start to realize that life is really a tough game. That's really hard. After being protected by...
Yes, he's too hungry. He's very hungry.
It doesn't matter what challenges you're facing, sooner or later you start to realize, you know, this game is really tough. And the only choice is like, okay, I'll do it whatever because I have no other choice. Because losing and giving up is not an option.
Yes.
So you want the power, silent, and let God, let go.
Let him, yes. I'm doing that because it's enough for me.
There's no other
answer.
Okay, thank you, everybody.